Prefatory of Facts and Fancies. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. Prefatory. To the reader. Without discussing the antecedents of which the publication of the following pages is a sequence, the author begs in advance to be acquitted on his own motion of the presumption of posing as a poet, or the intention, premeditated, malicious, or other, of perpetrating poetry upon the public. No one knows better than he does the estimation in which minor poets are held by the more capable men of affairs of the present day, as well as how rare a man is a great poet, of whatever age. The fact is, advancing peoples are emerging from the mythopic and poetic planes of human development, and no longer live in an atmosphere of supernaturalism and superstition, which constitute the most nutritious pabulum of poesy. Science smiles and business sneers the mystical and fanciful in modern literature, and the implied incompetency of the dreamer. Poets as a race will soon be extinct. Tennyson has no successor. College Hill, September 1895. End of Prefatory. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 1 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 1. 7:30, bright and early. That is, early for a man who goes to bed at 1 a.m. and seldom before 9 arises. I was up and dressed and running downhill toward a railway station. Railway owned by Robert Simpson, owned and run by Robert for the benefit of friends and neighbors, and whatever else is in it. Station called the Sanitarium, for a hospital above there on the hilltop. Building spacious, grounds delightful, roomy, shady. Pure spring water, just the place for invalids who've been prostrated, overworked, or lost their balance, and need rest for restoration. Heard the locomotive whistle loudly near the station, fairly howling at the station. Hastening then my steps a little, lengthening my stride a trifle, swinging gripsack and umbrella, down the hill I went, regardless. Someone laughed who saw me going, laughed without occasion, I thought. But the vulgar always laugh when better persons meet with mishaps. Step on orange skins, for instance, and sit down upon the sidewalk, suddenly unexpected, before strangers, or bareheaded, chase their hats blown off by high winds, or attempt, and fail, by running, to catch up with trains in motion. It was warm work, but I made it. Made the train and got on board it. Southbound train for Cincinnati. Early morning train, conducted by the tall and tawny Richer. First name Henry. First rate fellow. Held his train for half a minute when he saw me coming. Mercury 86 and rising. car was full of men of business on their way from homes suburban, cottages and mansions roomy, fresh green leaves and arbors leafy, wives all beautiful and happy, children sweet and good and lovely, to the dull and dusty city, to the hot and horrid city, all intent on making money, 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 all expecting having made it, made enough to be made happy. Strange delusion, yet a good one. Makes men work, and makes them honest. Men must work to gain, and must be honest to be very happy. Not a man on College Hill would jeopardize his soul's hereafter for $1,000,000. They all know the fate of Dives, how it fared with him and Lazarus. They all know about a camel squeezing through a needle's eye, how difficult a thing that would be. And in fact there's not a man there who by nature avaricious, not one that would wreck a railroad, loot a bank, or cheat a neighbor, advertise to sell his wares at less than cost, year in and year out. College Hill men are all honest. All on board were reading papers, some commercials, some inquirers. Each one said to every other, "Warm this morning, getting warmer." Every other in return said, "Very, very warm this morning." Then each one and every other resumed reading, reading how the Japanese had thrashed old China. Not another word was spoken, not another word that I heard, all the way from College Hill to that old dark and gloomy depot that disgraces Cincinnati, name of which I need not mention. The CH&D is meant, though, relic of a bygone era, waiting for a good time coming. End of chapter 1. Chapter 2 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus Everts. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2. 8:15 at the Grand Central. Bought a ticket for Peoria. Big Four route. The Big Four is, of all roads the best, no matter where you wish to go, shortest, smoothest, quickest, safest, and the best conducted. Maybe. Bought train ticket and insurance for one day. Insurance needless. On Big Four road. Bought from habit. Always feel a sense of comfort when insured, a sense of duty done toward others, others who might find my bank account at zero under trying circumstances. Cost a fortune to get buried nowadays. Costly casket. Used to bury folks in coffins. And a funeral procession. Carriages and horses many, paid for out of one's estate now, costing no one knows just how much. Flowers too. No, not while I'm waiting. Inhumation. Not a blossom. I like flowers when not funeral. Like them in their proper places. Like them wild, amid the grasses, in the woodlands and the meadows. Like the springtime's dainty beauties, pure and sweet as infancy, and the summer's gaudy blossoms, passionate like youth, and lovely. Also autumn's golden glories, promises of youth fulfilling. All the faultless decorations of incomparable nature. Like them too, in kitchen gardens, tended tenderly by women, under windows, front and rearward, climbing porches, over arbors, flanking sidewalks, leading homeward, by their colors and their odors, all reminding one of someone, mother, sister, or old sweetheart. And ah me, of youth departed, like them in conservatories, after autumn leaves have fallen, housed like royal Russians in their winter palaces, secure from nihilistic frost fiends deadly, but in close shut, curtained parlors, where the dead await inspection by the friendly and the curious, and the funeral directors. Systematic solemn movements, where the mournful sadly linger, till the final parting moment. There, forgive this touch of nature, there to me, there not a pleasure, at a wedding there becoming, and on all occasions festive, for there's laughter in their colors, and delight in their fresh odors, when our hearts are light and joyous, but not when grief veiled and sobbing, in the first hours of our anguish, in the presence of our sorrow, our dear dead still undelivered to all the devouring darkness. Then they mock our saddened senses, and deride the tears that blind us. Bought train ticket, as aforesaid, for Peoria, city famed for potteries and big distilleries. Country produce, much consumed there, goes in corn, but comes out whiskey. City named for a big Indian, once a chieftain, so reputed, of a band of savage vermin, called by poets noble red men, much bepraised by thin romancers, as a race of rare endowments, brave, sagacious, faithful, truthful, patient, uncomplaining, grateful, generous, appreciative, eloquent, and sentimental, in all virtues far excelling, false, degenerate, wicked white men, but such bosh is worse than buncombe. False as fact and wild as fancy, the red races all are savage, cruel, treacherous, ungrateful, sneaking, wily, and deceptive, low browed, lazy, unprogressive, infantile in mind and habits, never growing to full manhood, governed only by their fears and expectation of advantage, so they are, and ever have been. Cooper Campbell notwithstanding, such they were before the white man, restless, pushing, energetic, speculative, pioneering, braver than the bravest redskin, more enduring and sagacious, wiser, truer, noble, stronger, found him in the way, and traded, no matter what, for his broad acres, such before the Jesuit fathers, Hennepin, La Salle, and Marquette, chivalric, heroic, dauntless, traversed long leagues of wilderness, and these wonderful prairies, discovering the then Great West, such before the world famed sailor, driven by his strong convictions, sailing down a chartless ocean, day by day, into the unknown, sailing westward, ever onward, leaving the old world behind him, found at length the seaward portals of a new world, all unguarded, entered and aroused the red man, native and before unchallenged, to a conflict not yet ended. End of chapter 2. Chapter number 3 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 3. Showed my ticket to the gateman. "Hurry up," he said. I hurried. Found that every seat was taken. Asked for chair car. Asked for sleeper. "Not on this train," said somebody. "This is the accommodation." Disappointed and embarrassed, sought the smoker. There, by good luck, was a single seat, still vacant. Crowded, though, by train boys' baskets, and the water tank surrounded by a lot of dirty Dagos, immigrants, all sorts and sizes, striving hard to quench their thirst there. Immigrants, Italian mostly, looking weary and exhausted. Travel sore yet not despondent. Not all. Near me sat a maiden, dressed in dirty, tattered garments, oval featured, olive colored, brown eyed was she, rather drowsy, looking as she might if dreaming of her old home and her childhood, left behind now, both forever, or of some unhappy lover, whose caresses, warm and tender, she shall never more respond to. Was she dreaming, or but sleepy? In the next seat sat a matron, who, though young, the maiden's sister, was giving suck to hungry babies, twins, emaciated, fretful, tugging at maternal fountains, pendant, empty, bare, and grimy, yet to them their only solace. Not a figure such as artists, her own countrymen, for instance, Raphaelia, spelled phonetic, or the Spaniard, famed Muracilo, master painters of Madonnas, Madalenas, Blessed Virgins, would have chosen for a model, nor were her, the maiden's features, reminiscent of such beauty as the enamored artist, Guido, memorized and made immortal by his portrait of a lady, being led to execution, Beatrice, not her whom Dante worshipped, but a noble Roman, daughter of the house of Fancies, persecuted by her father, killed for killing him, a monster! Read the tragedy by Shelley. Other children were around her, fretting, crying, wanting water, while behind them sat their father, careless of their wants, unconscious, sleeping soundly, sleeping, snoring. Thus survive the fittest, strongest. Such is nature's law, or order. In all kingdoms, such the practice of all peoples, Jew or Christian. He who hath, to him is given more and more, is gospel teaching. If not given, he will take it, strength forever robbing weakness, without pity and remorselessness. Such is thrift. Long live the thrifty! Let the weak lament their weakness, let them rail, or let them weep. There's no escape from nature's edicts. Yet an altruistic ethic grows apace as time develops more and more the growing races. Now and then a man of money, either vain or philanthropic, or afraid of hell, provides for hospital or home for orphans, or endows a namesake college and 1,000 benefactions. dropping from the hands of Christians, not dogmatic Christians only, aiding weakness in its struggle, so unequal for existence, testify to evolutions, modifying human nature. States, too, now protect their weakest from the pitiless indifference of nature or of providence by asylums and taxation. And in time to come, it may be, love will triumph over selflessness, strength bear weakness as a burden, self-imposed, and all grow stronger. But nor love nor hate can make them equal in the scale of being, nor adjust their rights and wrongs by forcing them to seek a level. End of chapter 3. Chapter 4 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 4. Immigrants Italian, wherefore, wandering from a land of beauty, famed through ages long and many, from a land of constant sunshine, where the skies are never clouded, and the earth is ever verdant, from a land of balmy breezes, where the winds are never wounding, but refreshing, gentle, healing, from a land of fruits and flowers, corn and wine and oil and honey, macaroni and bologna, where are castles and cathedrals, palaces and ancient ruins, storied urns and dust of heroes, bones of saints and holy martyrs, nails and splinters of the true cross, and a thousand things unmentioned, interesting to the gifted? What now brings this people hither, to a country unhistoric, unpoetic, unromantic, new and rude and realistic, where no memories have clustered, moss-like, on old walls and turrets, and no legends lead one's fancy back through ages into dreamland, where no prophet, but Smith, Joseph, hath revealed, direct from heaven, God inspired, a new religion, where no holy wells, nor cities, glad the hearts of faithful pilgrims, where no kings have ever been crowned, not a Caesar bold aspired to rule the world with bloody sceptre, where no Virgil, Tasso, Dante, hath yet sung himself immortal, where no plastic art hath builded home or tomb or holy temple of incomparable beauty, where great capitals are tawdry, and great cities are mushroomic, where great battlefields are recent, and there's nothing interesting to a man of brains and culture, light and sweetness, intellectual, like the late lamented Arnold. Matthew meaning, not Sir Edwin. What is there behind this movement? True, we have great lakes and rivers, lofty mountains, grand prairies, waterfalls, both great and little, falls that laugh, and falls that thunder, parks as big as old world empires, grain fields growing bread for millions, mines that smile at old Golcondas, have, in fact, in common parlance, oratic, newspaperal, as you may have seen it written, heard it roared, or sung, or shouted, the greatest country in the world, best that God's sun ever shone on. Half the continent is ours now, and the other half soon will be. Greatest people on God's footstool, not afraid of all creation. Whipped Great Britain twice already, made her pay us 15 million to prevent another thrashing. Got more money now per head than any other living people. Credit good in every market, nothing that we don't excel in, from the making of a whistle to an engine called the Corliss, from a country district school up to a scientific college, from a democratic caucus to a constituted congress. Room we have, too, for all comers, all except the heathen Chinese, wherein all may chase their phantoms, money, fame, or pleasure only. And what's more, we've peace and plenty. Peace and plenty, the problem of this influx of Italians finds intelligent solution. Hunger there and war impending, peace and plenty here inviting. Tell the story of their movement from ancestral homes like cattle, from exhausted pastures to fresh fields they have been driven. Love rules the court, the camp, and so forth. So sang Sir Walter, or some other poet who I don't remember. But love flies before the shadow of gaunt hunger, pale and pulseless, staying not to mock or question shade so gloomy and portentous. Hunger, born of famine, stalking before death through nature's kingdoms, happily for nature's children, giving them all timely warning, wordless, but informing, haply, teaching life its needs, its dangers, silent now, and now with clamor, driving life to fresh exertions. What to it are love's persuasions, sentiments of kinship, country? Idols, that, as it approaches, fall, as Dagon fell before the God of Israel, prostrate, helpless. End of chapter 4. Chapter 5 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 5. Locomotive loudly shrieking, tortured by a fire fiend inward, madly reckless, headlong plunging, its long trained tail trembling, shaking, in a state of agitation, outward rushed through fields and woodlands, hot, and growing ever hotter. Atmosphere within was reeking with the breath and sweat of mortals, innocent of soap and water, redolent of bad tobacco, fumes of undigested beer, and babies' toilets, long neglected. Bah! How could one live and breathe it? Up my window went, and out my nose and eyes, soon filled with cinders, chunks that felt as big as brickbats, smoke and ashes such as fell on Pompeii out of old Vesuvius, choked me and obscured my vision, all the way from Cincinnati to that famous Hoosier city, where Jim Riley writes sweet verses. End of chapter 5. Chapter 6 of Fants and Fancies by Orpheus Everts. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 6. Change cars! I changed in a hurry. Got a good seat. No Italians. Goodly Hoosiers, men and women, all intent on going somewhere. Here's a bridegroom, looking silly, at a blushing bride of 20. There's a grandsire, over 80, stooped and silent, looking lonesome. Sportive children, not yet weary, like so many monkeys playing. Big girls chewing gum, or crunching peanuts, popcorn, or red apples. Country jakes, lopsided, lolling in their seats, tobacco chewing. City Alecs, spruce and duddish, looking clean and cool and brainless. Rustics in new suits just purchased of some Israelish merchant, costing noddings almost. Aha! And still other human beings, all alike with variations. Special characters among them soon attracted my attention. One, a lean faced, swarthy preacher, big nosed, heavy browed, and bushy, cheekbones high, ears long and meaty, jaws that Samson might have envied when he slaughtered the Philistines. Manners vulgar, chewing toothpick, talking loudly to some cistern. Women of his own persuasion, Baptist followers of Campbell, self-styled Christians, talking gospel, in a tone that gives assurance of an ass, no matter where heard. Talked, he did, of funerals, weddings, Sunday schools and Bible classes, of the temperance cause, neglected, and of Zion, how it languished in these days of mammon worship. Said he had a call to go to Indianapolis, might accept it. Was still praying for instruction. Salary $3,000. Was now getting but 1,200. Family was large, increasing. Wife enjoyed poor health, and he had not been quite well himself of late, but trusted all to Providence. Providence has much to care for, said a meditative sister. I don't wonder some poor mortals, seeing facts as they do see them, judging from appearance only, ignorant of hidden purpose, doubt God's goodness, doubt his justice, doubt his care for human beings, and cry out with Ingersoll. Ingersoll! The preacher shouted. Ingersoll's a brazen liar! A blatant blasphemous buffoon, making fools laugh while he robs them, ignorant but self-conceited. All his eloquence consists of epithets and false assertions, ridicule of God and Moses, Christ and all the Bible teaches. He don't argue, never reasons, is not capable of thinking, knows no more about the Bible than a goat does of Greek grammar, tears down all that faith has builded, all that strengthens, all that comforts, all that makes life here worth living, laughing at the devastation by his wickedness effected, like an imbecile old Roman, fiddling amidst conflagration. Started by his own devices, he'll find out who was mistaken when he wakes in hell and cries out, "Help me, Moses! Moses, help me! Such profane and noisy fellows! I don't know why God don't strike him, dead or dumb, and stop such slander." "He's been answered, has he not, sir?" said the meditative sister. "Answered! I should say he has been!" cried the preacher, quite emphatic. "I have answered him myself, and so have Saxby, Bruce, and Carey answered, but we have not silenced." "He must be a monster!" said a timid, shrinking, simple sister. "I should be afraid to meet him. How can people go to hear him?" "I once felt as you do," said a woman bearing marks of sorrow. Marks of martyrdom and patience, tempered by a touch of reason. "I do not approve his teaching, but my brother, who lives near him, has so often, often told me, that he never knew a better, truer man in all relations, husband, father, soldier, neighbor, than this same man, Ingersoll, is. Sensitive to wrong of all kinds, quick to hear and quick to answer the appeals of all who suffer." "So much the worse!" exclaimed the preacher. "Good deeds done by the ungodly only serve to damn them deeper. By appearance of virtue, they deceive and mislead others, the unthinking and unwary. There's no merit in their morals. Only true baptized believers should be credited by good works. They alone will find acceptance at the judgment seat of Jesus. He who thinks to enter heaven on his merits as a soldier, husband, father, or good neighbor, will be greatly disappointed. It is crime far worse than error. Far worse, I think, thus to offset sins too black for hell to punish, by some petty acts of kindness that cost nothing for the doing, may give pleasure to the doer on the part of unbelievers. Better far a thief, repentant, and believing that an angel, outcast stubborn and rebellious. "Yes, I know," replied the woman. "Yet I've sometimes thought that some men, who make long and loud professions of their faith, might be still better if they do at least their duties toward their families and neighbors, if they'd be more kindly careful for the comfort of their children, and the welfare of their women, here in this world, without danger to their happiness hereafter. They might not be quite so zealous in their church work, so ambitious to be recognized as leaders, elders, deacons by their neighbors, yet be more sincerely pious. But of course I do not know much, being only a mere woman. Still, I wish that all believers would behave themselves in this world." End of chapter 6. Chapter 5b of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus Everts. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 5b. In two seats, well barricaded by much baggage and a poodle, in a basket sat a maiden of the ancient order, saintly, cool, composed, but not unconscious. Bolt upright she sat, her eyelids drooped to shut the vulgar world out, still defying time, the tyrant, On her brow and cheeks no wrinkles, bold betrayed how many decades had been numbered since her birthday. Not a drop of perspiration breaking through an epidermis made of chemic compositions gave the slightest intimation by the exposure of the true skin of her age, a well kept secret. Nor did any lines expressive of emotion or reflection indicate her thoughts or feelings. One might wonder what her thoughts were, of things near or far or present, realistic or romantic. If she thought of castles airy, castles ancient, built by fancy, in youth's green enchanted islands, now obscured by mist and ivy, time's benignant mist and ivy, in which once she thought to dwell with Love the prince of all enchanters, or of mansions being builded in the haze of distant Hopeland, looming like a mirage lifted from an intervening desert. Could she think? And was she thinking? If so, not by look or gesture did she give the slightest token of her maiden meditation. Not until the rude conductor, in a manner quite familiar, held his dirty hand out toward her, meaning thereby, "Ticket, please, miss," did she change her pose or aspect, then with air contemptuous saying, not by words, but looks emphatic, "Don't come near me. Don't you see I hate you and your sex supremely?" She at arm's length held her cheek, and closed her eyes while he received it. In the next seat, what a contrast, sat a lovely girl of 20, youthful, beautiful, overflowing with the joyfulness of being; she, with beaming eyes expressive of both innocence and passion, without waiting invitation, handed out her ticket, smiling, asked the rude official questions, thanked him for discourteous answers, looked about with charming sweetness, and resumed her novel trilby. Why will youth and beauty always boon companions with love triennial, so bestow themselves together, charming trio, yet all transient? When one goes, the others follow, gone, appreciated after. Youth, a gay and joyful fellow, hopeful, cheerful, bold, aggressive, seeking pleasure or adventure, reckless of all present danger, thoughtless of the unseen future. Oh, that youth would tarry longer! Beauty, youth's divine twin sister, graceful, brilliant, fascinating, ruling all the world around her, ruling by her presence merely, like a child that rules a household, playful now and now imperious, smiles and tears alike imposing. Why was beauty doomed to perish when youth dies? Will love survive them? Love, oh love, more subtle still than youth or beauty, them beguiling with soft words and tender touches, melting eyes and furtive glances, stolen kisses, warm embraces, sighs and tears and breath of passion, dreams too, dreams fairer than ever, Morpheus forged for Archimago, to deceive a knight and lady in those far off days of magic, days of chivalry and romance. See "The Faerie Queen" by Spenser. Dreams resplendent beatific, dreams of bliss to last forever. Oh, that love bereft of beauty and of youth would still continue, when from these companions parted. What is there that can be offered to console or re inspire love? Nothing, nothing, alas, nothing. Age may offer in profusion titles, honors, fortunes, freedom from the common cares of life, and all the trappings of the lofty, horses, carriages, and servants, diamonds, emeralds, and rubies. Still love languishes and shivers in the arms of age, still hungers for the ripe-lipped luscious kisses, and the lithe-limbed warm embraces of lamented youth, the charmer. Vanity may feast on jewels. Love requires a different diet, and will seek far better perish. End of chapter 5b. Chapter 6b of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 6b. Next behind the blooming beauty sat a gay and festive masher, of the drummer species, buzzing, country widow, young and pretty, of the amorous variety. Now and then a blush betrayed the nature of his conversation. Lucifer, again, in Eve's ear, whispering the old temptation. Thus it runs in every language. What were apples made for, if not to be eaten? If pernicious, why do men and women crave them? Are we but the sport of nature, or creative malice? Were we made to hunger, starve, and perish, or to feed on thorns and thistles, with such food always before us? Poison fruits are always nauseous. Apples are delicious, wholesome. Take one, try one. Take a small one, take a bite, just. It won't hurt you. What if pleasure must be paid for by some pain? Life without pleasure, what would it be? Not worth living. Such the story, told and retold, with 1,000 variations, every day and every hour since man became a conscious being. Every woman born has heard it, or might have, had she but listened. Listened to her own heart even, mother heart of Eve still beating, rhythmic in each daughter's bosom. Happy she who, when she hears it, knows the voice, howe'er dissembled, to be his, the prince to evils, who, in the disguise of angel, serpent, lover, friend, or masher, is the same old world seducer, knows his voice and flies the danger. Sad the fate of her who, flattered by his lying tongue persuasive, listens till the mists of passion rise and hide her from high heaven, till with senses all bewildered, in his arms she lies enraptured, lies until the mists, subsiding, leave her bare and disenchanted, with remorse and shame and sorrow for companions, ever after. There be saints, though saintly women, who have fallen toward perdition, but the depths untold have risen, conquered self, and subdued evil, banished shame, remorse, and sorrow, and walked upright ever after. Saints, not many, it may be, though not all such are recognized by their self-righteousness, sinless sisters, saints when tried by truthful records, worthier are of admiration, and of higher seats in heaven, or of mansions more luxurious, as the case may be, no matter, than are they whose white souls spotless, passionless as moonlight marbles, statuesque in solemn churchyards, all unstained by sin's black fingers, live untempted by the evil, or by men who shun such always. End of chapter 6b. Chapter 7 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 7. Who's your farmer dressed in blue jeans? Features rugged, weather-beaten, full of kindness though and feeling, eyes deep-set, but clear and lively, white mouth, stained at either angle by home-grown nicotina, shoulders broad and slightly stooping, arms long, hands large, fingers knotty, all expressive of exposure, toil and strength, and long endurance. Such the man that thus addressed me. First trip ever tuck on railroad. Startin' out to see my daughter. Daughter livin' in Nebrasky. Haven't seen her since her mother died 2 year ago in August. Had the grippe, or something like it. Tuck a powerful sight of quinine, and a heap of draps and powders, and right smart of other truck, too. But it seemed like nothing helped her. Lived together 40 year, sir, her and me, come next December, and we never had no trouble. 'Twixt ourselves, she was better, though, than I was. I weren't always. As he spoke, a shade of feeling saddened his strong face a moment, and he looked away. The train stopped. Instantly, all interested and alert, said he, cheerfully, "Wonder what they're stopping here fur? Cows is on the track, or somethin'. More 'an like as not they've killed one. Killed a cow fer me last summer. Was a year. The finest cow, sir, that you ever see, I reckon. Best fer milk, or cheese, or butter, and the best disposed brute critter. Wouldn't tuck $100 fer that cow, and I got 20. Had to pay a lawyer 50 to get even what I did git. Better loss it. We poor farmers hasn't got no chance to speak of. Buckin' agin monopoliers. Too much odds, sir. Know Sam Dorris? Otter Sam make a speech once down in Sullivan, for instance, where Sam's king, and knows his people, mast-fed Democrats, some calls 'em, telling how the country's ruined, how the people's rights is trumpled in the dust by hordes of hirelings, tax assessors and collectors, railroad kings and heartless bankers, robbin' right and left, high-handed, telling how the rich is gittin' richer and the poor is gittin' all the time just that much poorer, All because the Democrats was cheated out of power in '60, telling how the toiling masses groans and sweats and can't make nothin', how the farmers' farms is mortgaged and they all will soon be homeless, how them fellers thar in Wall Street, where that is none on 'em knows though, bloated bond holders he calls 'em, living high weekdays and Sundays, drinking wine instead of whiskey, wearing billed shirts and kid gloves too, whilst from orphants' mouths they taken the poor widder's mite. I tell you, Sam is powerful on the stump, sir, but I never voted for him. Couldn't swaller no such fodder. I knowed better, and I've heard Sam tell too many scaly stories since I knowed him way back yonder, somewheres in the '50s maybe. Folks that's triflin', folks that's lazy, hain't got nothing, never will have, but is mad as folks as has got. Folks that drinks and loafs and gambles, whilst their wimmin folk is washin' to support 'em and their children, all ye's got too many of 'em, shouts when Sam talks of taxation, when he tells 'em how the tariffs robbing them of all their wages, and the millmen, iron and cotton, is a piling up their millions. I hain't got no use for such folks. I don't see but what the country's doing fairly well, myself, sir. I hain't nothing to complain of. I don't think the railway done the square thing by me 'bout that cow though, not adzactly. Mandy'll feel bad when I tell her the whole story. She was Mandy's pet, that cow was. Mandy raised her from a calf, see? Wanted her when she got married, but we thought we couldn't spare her. I give her a first-rate farm, though, in Nebrasky, whar I'm going. Mandy married Jimmy Johnson. Mout 'ave known Jim? No, a stranger in these parts. Was you a gineral or a colonel? See you wear that pretty Loyal Legion button. Them's my colors. Allus liked 'em. Mind me of my boy, poor feller. He went out in '61, sir. Fit through all the war. Was wounded 13 times, sir. Knowed him maybe? He went out with the old 20th. The best rigerment that went out. What? You the sergeant of the 20th? Why, of course, you'd know my boy then. Cut his arm off at the shoulder, down there in front of Petersburg. Well, I'm mighty glad to see you. My boy often talked about you. Talked to me and mother how you stopped the blood and saved his life once. And I've got a letter now that you've then writ his mother 'bout him. Talked about you and the chaplain, Porter, how he fed the wounded. Done more good than praying. He lived till 2 year ago, sir. Killed his mother when he died, too. Old man paused again. A shadow of deep feeling once more saddened his strong, homely, manly features. I looked out upon the landscape, but confess I did not see much. Memories coming thick and fast then, some with tears and some with blushes, for a moment blinded me too. Porter, worthy man and soldier, my best friend, of days departed, a wide gulf of time between us, would that I were worthier now to recall all the love he bore me. But the old man soon recovered and resumed the conversation. There's a lot of fellers that I know of, drawin' pensions that weren't wounded, but I hain't begrudgin' no one that enlisted and seen service. All the money they can git now, I had ruther see 100 unhurt soldiers gittin' pensions than to see one badly wounded, slighted by this grand old country that so many fit and died fer. Not afraid, then I suggested, of bankrupting Uncle Samuel, paying pensions to impostors? Well, not much, the old man answered. Some folks seem to be afraid that all the world's a going to ruin. I hain't one of that there stripe, though. I don't train with that malisher. It's is natural, though, to some folks. I told Sam, last time I seen him, stopped at my house and talked diner. Me and Sam were always good friends. I told Sam that he knowed more than I did maybe about tariffs and such things, but there is one thing that I know, Sam, just as well as you do, or as if a preacher told me, and that is concerning all this talk about the dangers threatening us just now. I tell you, as for folks that's got good health and common sense, that is, for judgment, don't get drunk, nor bet on horses, work industrious, late and early, says their prayers both night and morning, takes good care of wives and babies, and votes straight Republican. They don't skeer now worth a damn, sir. End of chapter 7. Chapter 8 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 8. Brakeman called the name of station, called in language unfamiliar. Volapuk or Choctaw, maybe. Bling na ting was how it sounded. Bloomington was what it meant though. Bloomington, the largest city, 'twixt the Wabash and Peoria. Oh, the Wabash, far behind now, crossed at Covington an hour since. Once it was a grand old river, flowing, bankful, deep and silent, through a dark, primeval forest, whose majestic oaks and walnuts, lofty hickories and poplars, shady maples, leafy beeches, wide-spread, white-armed sycamores, aspens, white ash, linden, cherries, gorgeous in their varied garments, glassed themselves in its smooth waters, elms too, priestly or paternal in their aspect, seeming sentient, sympathetic, vindictive, overlooking all the forest, glorified its banks aforetime, banks now bare, or torn and ragged, gone the glory of the Wabash. Gone too peoples prehistoric, ancient peoples who once builded temples, tombs, or strong defenses, structures strange to modern science, on its banks and tributaries. Peoples whose remains archaic witness their existence only. Have we not builded better than they did? We of the ages modern historic. Shall we too perish, perish unaided, lost and forgotten? Answer, Sir Oracle. Are not our temples built of pure knowledge? Their transepts and naves all wide, high, and roomy, where wisdom and science met as a college, banish the false and dispel the gloomy. Shall they not outlast forms of matter, stone, bronze, or iron, clayey ceramics, pyramids, tombs, all things that time shatters by slow decay or rapid dynamics? Be this as it may, one thing is certain. You will, and I will, vanish forever. No matter what stage we play on, the curtain will fall, and so end our supremest endeavor. End of chapter 8. Chapter 9 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 9. Bling na ting, brakeman repeated. Train stopped. For a moment only. Passengers got off and on though. One, a fleshy woman, flurried, wheezing, sweating, fanning, got on. Fussily she found a seat, and filled it full, so wide her garments, found it difficult to settle, all at once, reposefully, found too, train then in full motion, that she'd left a silk umbrella. Left it settin', so she said, there in the depot by the winder. Will somebody stop the cars for just a minute while I git it? Can't wait there, I know I do it. Told Matildy 'fore I started that I'd lose it. Cost $3. Marked down. Had been from $6.50. Had an old one. Might have carried just as well as not. But didn't. Wish I had now. Don't they never stop no trains when they get started? Slamming to the door behind him, entered then the train conductor. "Tickets, please," he sharply uttered, in his speech and in his manner, both important and impatient. Soon he stood beside the woman, thus lamenting her umbrella. "Ticket, please." The woman fumbled, first her pockets, then her satchel, stood erect and shook her garments, vowed she bought one, must have lost it. Disconcerted, face grown wetter, down she sat, deeply embarrassed. "Fare, please," growled the cur conductor, growing more and more impatient, face and fingers plainly saying, "Hurry up, I want your money." "What do I care what you've lost, or how you lost it? I can't wait now." Did he never know his mother? Did he never have a sister? Steadily the woman studied his hard face a moment, then she, having made her mind up, deftly, from her wide capacious bosom, wherein much beside lay hidden, drew forth an old worn portemonnaie, and astonished, found her ticket. End of chapter 9. Chapter 10 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus Everetts. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 10. Miles of cornfields, miles of stubble, telling of a garnered harvest. Goodly houses, barns, and orchards, shady groves and sunny gardens. Herds of cattle, hogs, and horses. Plowmen turning dark brown furrows, windmills lifting limpid water, such the features of the landscape, far and near, in all directions. Changed! How changed, since first I saw this! Then unbroken boundless meadow, oh, the grandeur of that vision! Gazing then with boyish wonder on a world before undreamed of. As I now, dim eyed, recall it, how I stood and looked and listened, nature worship strong within me, and the infinite around me, drinking in the revelation of eternity and distance. How I lost all sense of selfhood, and my soul became ecstatic, until I heard inspiring voices, new, mysterious, solemn, awful, voices of the vast all, not me, the immensity of matter, time and space, then calling to me. Since that vision I have seen much, much remembered, much forgotten. Nothing though of life's experience now appears in stronger colors. 'Mid the shadows of its sunset, or recalls sublimer feeling, since I've looked upon old ocean in its many moods and aspects, heard its voice when tempest tortured, like the wail of a world's anguish, listened to its gentle murmur when caressed by wooing zephyrs, soft as dove notes and as soothing, since have climbed high mountains, reaching regions of eternal silence, undisturbed save by the wings of unseen winds in rapid motion, since have seen great armies meet in deadly conflict, lines of battle, blue and gray lines miles extending, waiting while opposing cannon herald challenge and defiance. Watch the brave battalions forward, now advancing, now retiring, now confused, and now in order, firing, cheering, cheering, firing, falling, cursing, groaning, dying, all the dreadful din of battle, smoke and dust, the front concealing, streams of wounded flowing rearward, soon appear, many bleeding, some begrimed and tattered only, some on stretchers, some on horses, some by willing comrades aided, far too many, intermingled with, alas, poor human nature, combatants who've lost their courage, seeking shelter from war's fury, and death's frightful, horrid visage. Now a sudden silence startles, by sharp contrast, anxious watchers. Now again the battle rages, on our left with greater fury. Now the right assails, and now the center moves en masse to slaughter. 20,000 men have fallen. Still the fight is heady, louder. Louder roar the angry cannon, louder the incessant rattle of innumerable rifles. Colors fall, again uplifted by the living, nearer deserted, though the dead lie thick around them. Ambulances, stretcher bearers, surgeons, chaplains, all are busy. Yonder sits the great commander, on his war horse, all attention, sphinx like, still, without emotion, seeing through the clouds of battle visions of his country's glory. No one knows what he is thinking. Now with due salute approaches, an old corpse commander, saying, "Men are falling fast in front there. Shall I not withdraw my forces? Are they falling on the other side as many, think you, General?" Is the answer prompt, decisive, such with him the only question, such the portent of his presence, such the tenor of his genius. War means battle, battle killing. Who can spare the greater number? Fighting to a finish will be victor in the end, always. To and from him anxious, earnest horsemen flying hither, thither, do his bidding without shrinking, often difficult and dangerous, till at length the sun goes down on a great combat undecided, welcomed by both hosts the darkness that divides them, though tomorrow they shall meet again undaunted. And sad sight for men, or angels, if there be such fabled beings. I have seen the field of battle, when deserted by the living, strewn with dead men and the debris of a long, destructive combat. Bravely fought by forces equal, fought by men of mold heroic, leaving memories immortal. Seen it when but dimly lighted by the sad moon, half in shadow. Seen it when illuminated by the early morning sunbeams, magnifying every feature of its ghastly presentation. Features time cannot efface, nor memory refuse to mirror. Other scenes, sublime or simple, many, many now confront me, but as life's romantic story nears its close, and fancy falters on its wings by age enfeebled, this old vision of the prairies reappears in all its grandeur, and again I feel the spirit of the universe around me, and once more I hear the voices of the infinite, all, not me, calling, calling, and I answer, coming, coming from and to thee. End of chapter 10. Chapter 11 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus Everetts. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 11. Freight train on a side track standing, side tracked we also and waiting, stock cars yonder bearing cattle from the plains to city market, and predestined slaughter, uncomplaining, patient martyrs, who could look upon them standing, thus imprisoned, thus predestined, and not feel some touch of pity. Pity, pity, what were cattle made for but for beef and leather, milk and labor, for man's uses? Man's exclusive use or pleasure, so still argues the conceited, boastful, narrow-minded, selfish, self-styled Lord of all creation, who in histrionic garments, on life's stage a moment strutting, thus recites his vain eulogiums. Ah, how perfectly adapted to man's appetites and needs are the supplies of bounteous nature! Beef and mutton, for example. Bread may be the staff of life, but meat gives youthful strength and courage. How could men get on without it? How delicious, how nutritious, savory to nose and palate! Gods and men alike delighting, beef for breakfast, beef for dinner, boiled or roasted, cold for supper. There is nothing more appeasing Talk of chicken, talk of turkey, canvas back or terrapin, salmon, shad, or mackerel, oysters, crabs, and all such things. Nothing takes the place of beef, still. Beef for all, both rich and poor folk. Beef for kings and beef for subjects. Beef for armies, can buy armor. What a gift from God to man it! How beneficent, indeed, are all the ways of Providence! See how God provides for mankind. Hard on cattle, well it may be. What is that to you or me, though? Should we not be proud and thankful that we are not cattle? That we were not made to be consumed by brutes of still higher order? That whatever else God made, He made for us, our own uses; made earth first for us to live on, then the sun to give us daylight, then the moon and stars for night lamps, and all living things besides us, eatable for our maintenance, proud and thankful to be cared for thus by such a gracious being. An omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent Creator! Egotistic stuff and nonsense! Man is not a favorite being, pet or protege of heaven, nor of earth, nor regions under, if there be such. Man is cared for, neither more nor less than other beings born of force and matter, each adapted to surroundings by its needs, each responding to environments and uses, all determined and accomplished by the demiurgic spirit that in matter is inherent, moving it, and ever from it, molding endless forms of being. Man's begotten, born, and nourished, lives and dies like other mammals. Every organ of his body, every appetite and function, every passion and emotion, every gesture and expression of intelligence or feeling, has its like in other beings, beings of a lower order. Facts disprove this proposition of design premeditated on the part of God or nature, making all things for man's uses, man from cares and want exempting. True, man may be, is superior to all other forms of matter, to all other living beings, in his aptitude for knowledge, but he's not exempt from perils, penalties, and hard conditions that environ him in common with all other things organic, and compel him still to struggle for existence for the most part, painfully and unsuccessful, falling by the wayside, dying, all along the rugged pathway between infancy and old age, dying of his wants and weakness. Accidents and imperfections, famine, pestilence, and earthquakes, fire and water, all destroy man, when subjected to their action, notwithstanding God's protection. Give man but a grain of strychnina, and he dies, as wolves or dogs die. 20,000 human beings die of snake bites now in India, every year. What were snakes made for? Tigers too, man-eating tigers. Was man made for tiger diet? What? The devil interferes with God's designs and thwarts his purpose. Oh, the devil! Oh, the folly, weakness, vanity, presumption of poor man, the self-deceiver! This the truth is now apparent. In old eras, prehistoric, all the families of man were far below the present level of the higher, highest brute then, with the lowest man, contested, common planes of being, equals. But through many ages since then, man has outgrown his near neighbors. A few ounces of brain matter, slowly added to man's forebrain by its own inherent force, has, in the course of time, increased his capability of knowing, and so placed him where he is, the thought-crowned leader of the column of all living things still moving, from the simple to the complex, in both form and adaptation, in a steady stream of progress. Yes, those ounces of brain matter, quite peculiar matter brain is, make man wiser, better, stronger, stronger, better, because wiser, wiser because wisdom is the bloom of knowledge in full blossom. End of chapter 11. Chapter 12 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus Everetts. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 12. Woman fainted, fell unconscious, overcome by heat or other cause mysterious. Water, water, cried the fleshy woman, flurried. She who'd lost her silk umbrella. Half a score or more of sisters were beside her in a moment. Pallid, limp, and lifeless lay the fallen form, which they uplifted, rubbed and fanned and duly sprinkled, doing something without knowing what to do or how to do it. 4 or 5 excited women, all at one, vociferated. "Is there a doctor on this car?" Nor was call thus made unheeded. From a rearward seat uprising, came a man, no longer youthful, nor yet old, a man whose presence was commanding and inspiring. Grave he was in his demeanor, yet not sad, austere, nor sullen, self-possessed, but not conceited. In his manner he was manly, gently pushing by the women. Patient's wrist he held a moment, taking in the situation, while the fluttering flock around him chattered and interrogated. "What d'ye think's the matter, doctor? Prostration, nervous, isn't it? Looks to me more like heart failure. And so many die of it now. Ain't it fits? I have a neighbor that has fits. Acts just like her. Maybe it's hysterics, ain't it? Awful pale. She must have fainted," were among the interjections, all of which he failed to notice. Then, without a word of warning, or a question, from his pocket he drew forth a knife, and thrust its long keen blade beneath her corsage, ripping it from belt to neckband, all the sisters standing speechless, dumb with fear or consternation. Then, with dignity retiring, he resumed his seat unchallenged. Instantly the patient gasped, and her bared chest resumed its functions, soon to consciousness returning, outer garments quickly pinned up. She reclined in moody silence. Train meanwhile at a way station, having stopped, the silent doctor, unobserved took his departure. "Never seen just such a doctor in my born days, never, never," said the first one to recover from amazement, the fat woman. "Don't believe he is a doctor," said another, gravely nodding. "Run her round though, mighty sudden." "Guess he knowed what he was doin'," said the practical old farmer. "She's a come to if he'd let her. If he'd waited. he touched her? Said one, neither wise nor witty. Seems to me he might have told us to unhook her, not have spoiled her. Nice new garments, if they were tight. Nice new garments, if they were tight, says another, contemplating with compassion the sad victim. They were not tight. Fools to think so. The idea! Screamed the patient. Snapped like lightning when he cut 'em, slyly whispered the old farmer, with a merry, senile chuckle. Something must have been the matter. Folks don't fall that way for nothing, said a quiet, thoughtful woman. All she needed was a little campfire or Jemaky ginger. I most always have some with me, but somehow this time forgot it. It is better than a doctor when there's nothing much the matter, said a self-complacent female with an air of satisfaction. Better anything than doctors, sick or well. I hate, despise them. Self-conceited, false pretenders. I can guess, as well as they can, what's the matter, and their poisons. Well, I'd rather take my chances with disease than with their doses. They can't cure, and don't relieve you. All they care for is your money, said a thin-lipped, sharp-nosed woman of uncertain age and doubtful mental soundness, as I thought then. You must have been strangely favored to have lived as long as you have, without feeling the greatest need of, without knowing the greatest worth of, men whom I think, of all men, are worthiest of admiration, confidence, and true affection, said a woman whose appearance indicated blood and breeding, though but plainly dressed and poorly. It doesn't matter what my life's been, nor how long I've lived, nor whether I've been sick or well or sinful. I have reason to know better than to trust your wicked doctors, as some women do, I know of, holding up their shameless faces in the presence of their betters, said the sharp-tongued woman, flushing. I'm not curious, nor inquiring about personal experience. Life does not always leave its legends written plainly on our faces. What we are to-day, though, is the sum and sequence of our have-beens. And I speak from my experience when I say I think our best friends and most useful men are doctors, not your ill-bred quacks, pretenders, ignorant and bold impostors, advertising nostrum vendors, but learned men endowed by nature with the qualities of healers, men of conscience and knowledge, sympathetic, patient, constant, helpful with their heads and hands too, gentler than the gentlest woman, kinder than the kindest father, whether we are sick or sinful, said the lady with some feeling. Yes, I know. They're kind to sinners. Too kind, some of them, I've seen, are much disposed to sin themselves, too. Better far the consolation of religious and true men than the false kindness of such liars. There's more healing in the prayers of faithful men and women than in all the drugs ever compounded. A clear conscience and pure water, open windows and clean bedclothes, sleep and food are good for sick folks, but they need the help of God too. As for sinners, they should seek for consolation doing penance for their sins until forgiven. There is no other road to comfort All the kindness doctors do them Is not kindness when the end comes," said the thin lipped woman warmly. "You, perhaps, have never known the needs of other ministrations, always clean, and always well fed, never sinning, never soul sick. You have never felt forsaken by both God and man, an outcast, homeless, hopeless, prayerless, voiceless, faith destroyed, love deserted, or transfigured into hatred, all because of some great error, which nor time, nor prayers, nor penance could correct, nor compensate. Never felt the insurrection Of a proud soul against customs, cruel laws, unjust exactions, Crushed and beaten into silence, Or submission, by the blows Of ignorance, high handed, cruel. You have never had a husband, Once beloved, become a drunkard, Terrible, inhuman, brutal, Irreclaimable, untruthful, Lost to every sense of duty, Lost to every sense of pity, Yet the father of your children, Cursed perhaps in their begetting, No escape from his embraces, Cannot, therefore, comprehend The needs of souls thus bound and tortured. What are prayers or exhortations To a woman thus environed, Trodden under foot, degraded? What a pastor's cool assurance That God's will, howe'er mysterious, Must be cheerfully accepted? That to murmur is rebellious, And rebellion forfeits heaven; That a martyr's crown is glorious, To be prized above all riches. What his mockery of sorrow, Saying, "At the feet of Jesus You must lay down all your burdens, And ask him to bear them for you"? Jesus, when the consolation That you need is bread and butter For your children, and protection From the blows of a mad monster; When to feel a strong arm round you, Though but for a moment only, And to hear a word of kindness Spoken with appreciation Of your needs and inmost cravings, Without look of ostentation, Pity or reproach, would help you Do more toward your soul's salvation, If in peril, than the counsel Or the prayers of pious parsons. Doctors, too, are sometimes priestly, More than priests, in their relations To the sorrowful and troubled, Not alone in times of sickness, Or the martyrdom of childbirth, But when death invades our households, And lays hands upon our dearest; When God's mercy is veiled from us, And his justice darkly hidden; When our hearts are sore with sorrow, And our eyes with grief are blinded. They know best, then, how to help us, Know more our strength and weakness Than our pastors do, or can know," Said the lady of experience. "Let them touch you, if you wish it; I had rather be excused, though." "I don't wish their arms around me; I've no taste for such behavior," Said the doctor hating woman. "Doctors do some good sometimes; Get well paid for it, too, I think," Said reflectively the woman Who had sung the praise of Ginger. "Paid! The doctors give more money, Time and charitable labor To the sick and poor and friendless Than all others put together," Said the rather eulogistic Advocate of ideal doctors, Men too often underrated By the flippant and conceited. "Doctors," interposed the preacher, Who had listened with attention To this womanly discussion. Doctors, in a certain sense, are all right, good men, but there's something wrong with science, modern science. Doctors all should be believers, but they are not half of them. I don't know of half a dozen downright earnest Christian doctors. No, not more than one whose faith and practice justify the title. He's not worth much as a doctor. Some admit that they believe in a first cause or supreme ruler of the universe, but do not trust God's word for information, nor believe that Jesus Christ was God incarnate, nor the Logos, by which all things were created, yet admit that such a person lived and died a great exemplar, moral teacher, and all that, but nothing more. Some are agnostics, do not know, they say, and therefore don't believe. They say that they cannot without knowledge. Still they think they know a good deal more than others. Atheists they are, in fact, the followers of Herbert Spencer, Darwin, Huxley, Tyndall, Haeckel, Andrew White, and Fiske, and Winchell, and that crew of learned scoundrels who deny that God made Adam out of dust, a perfect being, through whom sin came by transgression on his part, thus undermining the foundation of our faith in Christian dogma, man's lost condition, and God's plan for his redemption. I don't know what is the matter. I've a brother, a good doctor, and a good man, too, as the world goes, was, before he studied science, a believer and church member, but he doubts or disbelieves now, says he thinks with Briggs and Smith that scripture may not be unerring, don't believe that inspiration comes from sources supernatural, thinks he knows as much as I do, or as any other man does, about God and hell and heaven, calls them myths or mental concepts modified by modern culture. I've done all I could to save him, but I can't convince the fellow. Science is the last invention of the devil for man's ruin. I've no ill will toward the doctors, but I'd rather do without them than to encourage modern science by endorsing their great virtues. Do you know that sharp-nosed woman that's so down on your profession? I have knowed her 40 years now. She's a widder, had a daughter, and some property, a doctor, one of these yer travellin' fellers, smart as lightning and good lookin', made love to her, got her money, and then ran away with Marthy. I don't blame her for bein' sassy," said the gentleman in blue jeans, in a sort of whisper to me. "Do you know the other woman?" said I, also confidential. "No, I don't exactly know her, but she hain't no common woman. She's got sense, and she's got courage, and's as eloquent as Doris. Doctors are no longer needed, if they ever were, as healers of the sick. I mean such doctors as depend on drugs to cure us. We have doctors now who teach us how to cure ourselves without them, more efficient, less expensive," said a bright-faced, sprightly woman, with an air of transcendental, esoteric, theosophic, sublimated satisfaction, looking through her gold-rimmed glasses. "Faith cure?" queried then the preacher. "Well, no, not exactly faith cure. Christian Science is the name of this new method of restoring. health and vigor to the body, said the young, enthusiastic convert to a fad preposterous. "What's the difference? I don't see it," said the preacher, or half growled it. "Faith cures imply miracle, and are effected, if at all, by supernatural power, suspending natural laws, responsive to the supplications of the faithful, special acts of God, while science cures indeed by application of great principles, eternal, doing violence to no law. Christian Science is true science, that is all there is about it," said the plucky little woman. "When by whom was it discovered?" asked the somewhat baffled preacher. "Christian Science was discovered, and has since been taught to others, by a famous Boston lady, Mrs. Eddy. Her book tells you all about it. Get it, read it." "It will do you good to do so," said the woman, still undaunted. "Christian Science! Devilish nonsense! Why call Christian? Why call Science? I suppose because it's neither. Neither Christ nor the Apostles ever said a word about it. They were healers of the sick, too. Pure unmitigated humbug!" sneered the preacher, much disgusted. "You may think so, others do not, quite as capable of judging," said the advocate of science versus faith, with smile sarcastic. "The biggest fools in God's world are silly women always chasing after foolish fads of some kind," said the ministerial critic. "Christian Science is no fad, sir. Names are nothing, facts are potent, principles are worthy credence, only when by facts supported, and you may have heard the legend, that a man is as he thinketh, which is truth, and Christian Science only makes an application of that principle. It cures too, there can be no doubt about it," said the philosophic female. "Ever cure consumption? Or a cancer? Or a case of smallpox? Couldn't cure a hoss, I reckon," said the skeptical old farmer, winking at me very slyly. "No, nor mules, nor human asses," sharply snapped the witty woman. The joke was old, but we all laughed, every one who heard, except the ancient maiden, prim and proper, and the sentimental widow, leaning on the masher's shoulder. End of chapter 12. Chapter 13 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 13. Stopped again. Sidetracked. Waiting. An express, due here, to pass us. Strange that I should be reminded, in this place and at this moment, by a word that I see yonder, on a badly battered freight car, of a name that oft awakens memories not always painful. Name, in fact, though never mentioned, that is never quite forgotten. Name of one, however distant, dead perhaps in proper person, as a spirit always answers promptly to my spirit calling, comes, as now, and stands before me. Oh, how subtle are the threads of thought that enter every fabric, by imagination woven! Yet how perfect many forms are! Memory, though age depletes it, holds in store a world of stuff still, from which fancy ever draws forth endless threads of many colors, weaving, weaving, ever weaving, till death hides both loom and weaver. Shadows falling eastward lengthen, eastern skies are tinging purple, shading into greenish opal, western clouds are blushing crimson, conscious of their blooming beauty. Wreck ahead! We'll be delayed here several hours, no telling how long, so the officers report now. Passengers get out and wander up and down the track at leisure. Not yet sundown, still the air grows somewhat cooler, more refreshing. Masher and the widow, strolling, find wild flowers along the wayside. Oh, how lovely, how delightful, how exquisite, and how fragrant, are the widow's exclamations, as he plucks and she receives them, common flowers on which she's trodden all her life in woodland pastures. Some she pins on her full corsage, some she fastens to his lapel, touched by rosy tinted fingers, thus transforming country posies into rare, delightful blossoms. One coquettishly gets tangled in the lace above her bosom, but she kissed it ere it fell there. Was it art, or was it nature? Love's an artist and magician, nature's handiwork transforming, by its touch, the homeliest objects, taking on new forms and colors. How thus beautified and garnished, even Bridget's brow Hibernian wears a diadem all queenly, and her face, although prognathous, rivals Daisy's, superb, matchless. Shakespeare said as much. You'll find it in the most delightful drama and imaginative poem, wherein he makes Puck and Oberon play fantastic tricks with lovers. My weak fancies are but fireflies when contrasted with his lightning. On our left, a city graveyard now attracts my observation. Monumental marbles standing, ghost-like white, beneath dark pine trees, all as silent as the sleepers over which they keep long vigil. Touched by the departing sunbeams, are both picturesque and gloomy, tinging fancies light with sadness. Will the sleepers whom they watch o'er wake to live, or unwaked slumber? Questions old, yet who can answer? What a mystery is being! Life and death, who knows their secrets? If life ends in death, or death is the beginning of a new life? Savage peoples, animistic, all expect to live forever, passing through death's dark defiles to happier hunting grounds hereafter. Christians, too, the most enlightened, live in hourly expectation, or belie their creed confessions, of a blast from Gabriel's trumpet, at the sound of which the dead shall all arise from Adam down to the last infant born and buried, all arise as if from sleep, and, after judgment, live forever, some in happiness, the faithful, who believe in Christian dogmas, all the rest in awful torment. The fact is that no one living thinks or can think of not being. Consciousness is never conscious of unconsciousness, and therefore self can never think of self as non existent or as lifeless. Browning might have said that better, if not more obscurely, perhaps. Pagan art, Grecian, Egyptian, here survives in forms memorial, obelisks, Corinthian columns, tablets, slabs, and urns pedestaled, side by side with Christian symbols, crosses, crowns, and forms angelic. Women dressed in wings and nightgowns vainly strive to stay the tide of time and rescue from oblivion. Fameless names, how soon forgotten! Vulgar passions find expression also in this art sepulchral. Vanity and pride pretentious are displayed as well as sorrow, faith and hope and sweet affection. See you pyramid of grain. See yon pyramid of granite, massive, high, severely polished, cost $100,000. What does it commemorate? Who was he who lies beneath it? Hero, martyr, statesman, poet? No, a man who made a fortune, made it by transactions shady, lived by all his neighbors, hated, died. This monument was builded by executors. He willed it. Such is not the legend sculptured on its base, but this is truthful. Face religious, mythopoeic, concepts ancient, modern dogmas, here likewise are symbolized. See that graceful female figure, winged to represent an angel, sympathizing with the sorrow of a stricken human mother, bringing to her heavenly comfort. See yon winged Apollo blowing, with strained cheeks, celestial trumpet, heralding the resurrection, looked for by all honest Christians, hoped for by the unbelieving. See that dove, the Holy Spirit, resting on an infant's gravestone, and behold the crucifixion, done in marble, full of pathos, or would be, but for some draping, solicitic, of the figure. Jesus on the cross, sublimest of all symbols, and yet, why so? Other crosses have been borne by other men who've died upon them. Men, not gods, a different story. This the legend of Christ crossed is, not as you, but as I read it. Legend of the Cross. God the great, the sole creator of both heaven and earth, sustainer of the universe and ruler, disappointed by man's conduct from the day of his creation, after waiting many ages, waiting, hoping, and despairing, of himself took counsel, saying, I have tried since I made man to keep him in subordination, humble, worshipful, obedient, walking in my ways appointed. But my efforts have all failed me. Every purpose has been baffled by his machinations, instigated by the evil, that malicious old time traitor, striving ever to dethrone me. Ignorant from the beginning, To keep man I have endeavored. Knowledge discontents the knowing, when still kept in subjuration. But he listened to a woman who had listened to the evil, and did eat of fruit forbidden, food that all his senses quickened, senses through which knowledge came, and he was ignorant no longer. For this first offense I cursed him, cursed and drove him from my presence, banished him from lovely Eden, fearing, knowing if I did not, he would seek and find another fruit yet growing in my garden, still more potent, which, should he eat, would transform him, make him equal to myself, a god immortal. Long he wandered, many children, many generations followed, born perverse, though loving evil, growing worse as they grew older, and more numerous and more knowing, hating me with silent hatred, worse than noisy accusation, dreaming still of paradise though, longing still for life eternal, finally indignant, angry, hopeless of all further effort, oft repenting having made man, I determined to destroy him and every living thing I for his maintenance created. So I moved the waters under, opened wide the windows over, caused a rain to fall unceasing, 40 days and 40 nights too, till the highest mountain ranges were with water deeply covered, and all life on earth extinguished. All except a saving remnant, saved the earth again to people, spared to spare me all the trouble of renewed creative labor. But one man then was found worthy of the trust I contemplated, perfect in his generation, walking with me. Him I caused to build a boat before the flood came, into which, with all things needful, he and his wife, sons and their wives, and some pairs of every other living thing, beast, bird, and reptile, were secured to serve my purpose. Oh, how desolate the earth looked to me, to even me then, me, who from eternity had calmly contemplated chaos, until moved to try creation as a grand experimental exercise of power long latent, and I felt a sad new sense of loss and grief and loneliness. Then I waited, watched and waited, for the waters to assuage, for the earth to be repeopled, for the coming generations to refill the vacant places. With that man I covenanted, promised him that I would never flood the earth again in anger, nor do other things I had done on account of the corruption of all flesh as I had found it, blessed him and all his family, bade them multiply profusely, and replenish the waste places, thinking and expecting that he and all of his descendants would be grateful and obedient, walking with me in my ways, and never causing me displeasure. But alas! the ancient leaven, flowing from the heart of Adam, moved their blood, and they too wandered in forbidden paths becoming, self-conceited and ambitious, doing not as I would have them, proud, presumptuous, and ungrateful, finally grown strong and many, thinking me far off, or sleeping, they conceive the bold design of gaining access to high heaven, where my dwelling place hath long been, by constructing a high tower, and thus accomplishing by cunning the great end of aspiration, the one thing so long denied them. When I saw this, saw their purpose, all of one mind, all conspiring, busy planning, busy building, building high the Tower of Babel, after personally inspecting what they'd done and contemplating what they might do if not hindered, having promised not to drown them, I determined to disperse them. So I sent them all a whirling, down the valleys, up the mountains, every one a language speaking, different from every other. Thus I thwarted their bad purpose, thus I spared the realms of heaven from their insolent intrusion, spared myself humiliation. I knew Lucifer was with them, and secured my throne from danger by disorganizing labor. From the man I thus dispersed have many peoples emanated, peoples who all worship gods, but do not worship me, the greatest. But one now of all the number knows my name or calls upon it in an attitude of worship, praying, praising, sacrificing, and though chosen and adopted as my own peculiar people, whom I promise to make countless, as the sands upon the seashore, superseding every other, both by increase and by conquest, watching over all their movements, guarding, guiding, and preserving, doing for them many wonders, out of Egypt safely leading them from bondage sore and cruel, making for them a safe passage through the deep sea, and o'erwhelming Pharaoh's proud pursuing army in the wilderness when starving, feeding them with quails and manna in an arid desert also, from a dry rock causing water to gush forth in streams refreshing, fighting many battles for them, with exterminating slaughter, giving them the spoils of nations, lands and flocks and maids and money, giving all that man could wish for, all except the one thing wanted, for which still man longs, aspiring. Still this people, this same people, does not love me, does not trust me. Would they were not so ungrateful, so self-willed, and so self-seeking, so like Adam and his consort, whose creation I regret still, often now in grief exclaiming, Israel, oh my Israel! Would that I had never made man, or that I might still reclaim thee, or that Adam had not eaten, or that apple had not listened to that woman, or that knowing good and evil, good from evil, had not chosen evil always. Only gods can know the feeling, the desire and need of worship. Strange the use man makes of knowledge, strange perversity of reason, striving thereby to discredit all my ways and all my words too. All that I have said or written for their past and future welfare, written by the hand of Moses, spoken by the mouths of prophets, and attested true by wonders that no other God could equal. Strange that men can doubt or question truths so obvious and simple. Truths that babes believe undoubting when repeated by their mothers. It must be that I've mistaken man's maturer comprehension. Can it be, I've often wondered, if I did not err in making man too capable of thinking? If I did, or did not err in making him too fond of women, if I did not also err in making women too attractive, too persuasive, too convincing, making both too speculative, curious about the future, curious about themselves, and about everything created. I have wondered why I did not make them different altogether. If I might not have prevented Lucifer from gaining access to my garden and protected, in her ignorance and weakness, the poor woman from temptation. Was I thoughtless? Was I careless? I had power to do so, surely. And I've sometimes wondered also if I have not been too hasty in my temper, too exacting in requirements, and too jealous in my intercourse with mortals, too revengeful in my anger, too unmerciful in judgment, notwithstanding all my goodness in my dealings with my people. But regrets are unavailing. Punishment has proved a failure. I've determined now to change my tactics and my manner toward man. I will call him back to Eden. I'll invite him to partake of that same fruit he longed for. I will ask him to appease his hunger and become immortal. But to seem myself consistent, still my sovereignty maintaining, I will tell him he must die. But death is only change of garments that will gain for him admission into states of life eternal, that the sins of Adam shall be expiated and forgiven, and my honor vindicated by a sacrifice unequaled, sacrifice that I will offer to myself for man's redemption. This I'll do, and to accomplish the great purpose indicated, justifying self to self, and reconciling man to me, I will perform a miracle that will startle and convince him. I will cause a youthful virgin to the royal house of David, afterward to be related, without sin or carnal knowledge, to conceive and bear a son, who among men shall represent me, and become a mediator, through whom all men may approach me. May through him, as elder brother, all become adopted children. He shall teach a novel doctrine. This my son shall new to mankind, and to all the gods besides me, doctrine of renunciation, sacrifice of self for others, love toward me, and love the neighbor. Me first, but the neighbor after. Reciprocity the highest and most sacred social duty. He shall call me Father, Father, never, never God Almighty, great Jehovah, as they do who seek to flatter me with vain words. Hypocrites, who do not love me, he shall tell the world who sent him. In my name he shall work wonders. Into wine shall transform water. Tell a woman, though a stranger, everything she ever thought of. Cast out devils from possessed men. Heal the sick, the lame, the palsied. Cause the blind to see, and feed the multitude that follows breadless. He shall speak and still the tempest, calm the sea and walk upon it, cleanse from leprosy the leper, and to life restore a dead man. Though entombed and decomposing, having done all this, his mission, still unfinished, he shall fulfill by his death, sublime and tragic, by both men and angels witnessed, at which heaven and earth shall shudder, first and only divine martyr. Like a common malefactor, he, the Son of God, shall perish, on a cross nailed and uplifted. He shall die with thieves, whose crimes are thick upon them for his death mates, acme of humiliation, emphasis of degradation, but as a divine exemplar, illustrating the new doctrine of self-sacrifice for others, in the agony of dying, all the mother in him feeling torture, keenest human anguish, hearing still the gibes and jeerings of his human prosecutors, the divinity within him shall cry out, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. Ceramented, buried, guarded, lest his tomb be violated. 3 days after he shall rise, and show himself to many living. Seeking his disciples, they shall by his wounds identify him, beyond doubt or disputation, after which, with them around him, having given them instruction and commandment, he shall vanish in a cloud from their dull vision, and ascend to me in heaven, thence, according to his promise, to return with power and glory, a new kingdom to establish among men to last forever. Such my plan for man's redemption, if my people will accept it. Well and good, if not, the heathen, for whom I have cared so little, shall be told of all my goodness, of my greatness, justice, mercy, loving kindness, and forbearance, and invited to become my lawfully adopted subjects, coming under my protection, by forsaking their allegiance to all other gods and serving me with faithful, true devotion. Such the legend, centuries since, a Galilean coming out of Nazareth, an humble village in Jerusalem, was murdered, victim of religious frenzy, tried, condemned and executed for denouncing orthodoxy as behind the times and teaching doctrines in advance of Moses, and for calling God his Father, and for working on the Sabbath, and for pricking pious bubbles of pretension on the part of self-inflated high church people. Whited sepulchres, he called them, full of dead men's bones, hypocrites, a dangerous experiment for any man at any time where religion is despotic, and for drawing many people after him and causing tumult, for pretending to be king of Jewry also, charge not proven. After this man's crucifixion, after he had been 3 days dead, it was claimed by his disciples that they found his tomb deserted, and that he, arisen living, had appeared to them and taught them his true mission, that he then was caught up in a cloud and vanished, that he might be soon expected to return with power and glory, as he promised them to do so, that he was the true Messiah, long expected by the Hebrews, as foretold by many prophets, that his people did not know him and refused to recognize him, that he had instructed them to preach his gospel to all nations, as Jerusalem beginning, offering them the benefit of his blood and shed for man's salvation. It has also been asserted, and made part of Christian dogma, that this humble Galilean was divine, was God incarnate, Son of, yet one with, the Father, sitting on the throne of heaven, that, although still daily looked for to appear on earth in person, he, before he left, commissioned one called Peter to look after his affairs on earth while absent, that through him and his successors a long line of holy fathers, Roman pontiffs, he established, and has ruled on earth his kingdom. Further it is claimed that all who've heard this story, and who hearing have believed and been baptized too, after death shall live again, and dwell in realms of bliss forever, but that all who've heard and doubted, or have failed to be baptized, should suffer everlasting torment. After centuries of preaching, teaching dogmas thus fantastic, still but few, compared with all who've heard the story, have believed it. Still but few of all the many who profess to comprehend the mystery of incarnation, think of Jesus as of God, or yet of God as ever flesh born. Others sneer at the pretence of popes and priests, both big and little, that they hold divine commission to dictate beliefs religious, or to bind or loose the souls of others here or elsewhere, or that they are gifted with more knowledge of God's person or his purpose than are other men of learning, or that they by prayers can move him to reverse or change intentions. Multitudes, great populations, worship other gods and follow other great religious leaders, prophets, sons of God, redeemers, in their own face strong, unchanging, scorning the presence of Christians, that their faith alone is holy. But if true or false the story, all the peoples so-called Christian have outgrown their pagan neighbors, have progressed beyond all others in prosperity and morals, in that knowledge which is power, too, have been growing ever better, in both principles and practice, and though still both superstitious and intolerant as churchmen, Christian men and women singly rise above the hard fixed dogmas of an age of mental darkness, and display a nobler spirit, broader, sweeter, and more generous, more forgiving, loving, trusting, dignifying, and exalting, than distinguish other peoples. Better, too, than the rude spirit of denial when uncultured, manifested by such men as see in faith no shade of virtue, in religion no response to nature's most profound suggestions, men who delve the dirt of knowledge, blind to starry facts above them, worshipping themselves insanely. Science sees the truth more clearly. What it thinks of inspiration, or of miracles, no matter, though it leave the supernatural out of every estimation. Human history confronts it with stern facts, and it discovers values in all faiths and virtue, in all practical religions, sees and comprehends the fact that this most complex Christian ethic of renunciation, sense of otherness as well as selflessness, finding ample illustration in the life and death of Jesus, as set forth in Christian Gospels, taking root, has grown and blossomed in broad fields of human culture, giving color and perfume to all that's called civilization. End of chapter 13. Chapter 14 of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus EVERTS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynda Marie Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Chapter 14. Darkness now obscures the distance. Still delayed, the train is standing, motionless. What is the matter? Comes from many lips, impatient. Wished I'd gone afoot, says one fool. Feared we can't make no connections, says the farmer on his way to see his daughter in Nebraska. After midnight, says the preacher, arms and jaws both wide extended, waking thus some drowsing sisters. Guess my folks is tired a waiting, volunteered the fleshy woman of umbrella reputation. This is nothing to what happens sometimes to me, says the masher. I don't mind it, says the widow, smiling languidly, yet sweetly. Ancient maiden, barricaded, still sits upright, firm and stately. Blooming beauty, just behind her, now is talking with a student on his way to Kemper College. She had graduated last year. She tells him, "No, not at Vassar." "Are you fond of reading?" he asks. "Yes, oh yes," she sweetly answers. Of good books I'm never weary. So they talk of authors, poets. He likes Scott, and she loves Byron. He thinks Milton grand, but gloomy. Says that Shakespeare's overrated, ungrammatical, and vulgar. Hasn't read him much, he couldn't. She thinks Tennyson has written some sweet things, his Maud, for instance. He has never read Maud, will though she does wish she could remember who the author is of something she has read sometime, somewhere. An exquisite little poem. Oh, it's Ella Wheeler Wilcox. He had never heard of Ella. Now of novels their discourse is. He likes Dumas, if the elder, or the younger, he don't know now, thinks his language beautiful, but doesn't care much for the story. She prefers Miss Dinah Mullock, Charlotte Bronte, and Miss Braddon. Has read some of Dickens, tried to, and so on and on they chatter, having much to learn, both of them, that experience only teaches. All the other persons mentioned in these facts and fancies either kept their seats and sat in silence, or gave ear to altercation between two hot-headed parties, equally equipped for battle, one an APA fanatic, as unreasonable and foolish, as deluded and as earnest in his quest for wrongs to right, or injuries to be avenged, done by the Pope of Rome, or threatened, as Cervantes' crazy knight was, when assaulting ancient windmills, and the other, no less doughty, in defense of Pope and Church, was quite as ignorant and zealous, quite as angry and contentious, neither knew enough about the matter then in controversy to discuss the subject calmly. Each depended on assertions, accusations, and denials, repetitions of old falsehoods, emphasized with "liar, liar." Scripture tells us who your Pope is. He's the Antichrist, no other. The dark mystery of evil, Scarlet Woman, War of Babylon, Beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, seen by John the Revelator. That's who he is, and you know it, said the party of the first part. Oh, you're talking through your hat now. You have heard some preacher say that. Give us something common sense folks, like ourselves, can understand, please. What's the use of cramming such stuff down our throats? We can't digest it, said the second party, hotly. Your church is corrupt, it's rotten, through and through, and always has been. Its whole history is infernal, cruel, bloody, and despotic. Over men and over empires, it presumes to be superior to the Bible, more authentic, exercising the discretion of a sovereignty supreme in the discharge of every function. Oh, the bold-faced, bald pretension! Popes and priests are all lascivious, drunken, avaricious rascals, and your nunneries are brothels, where their sins are hid by murder. These are facts, if you want facts, sir. You don't dare to read the Bible, nor to say your soul's your own, sir, if some bloated, red-nosed father, as you call your priest, has told you that you must not. You don't dare to send your children to the best schools that the world has ever seen, sir, just because you know they'll find out what old humbugs and impostors your priests are, and cease to mind them. You can't vote for whom you please, nor read nor hear without permission. There you go again. That's nonsense. There's no truth in what you said, sir. I'm as free to think as you are. You have no religion, that's all. I believe the Pope and learned men who devote their lives to study of deep subjects should know more than you or I do about such things. What the Church says about Bibles, schools, and other things religious, I accept with thanks. I've tried to think of God and heaven and hell and purgatory for myself, sir, but each effort proved a failure. I had rather take my chances in a strong and well-built ship, sir, well supplied and well commanded, than to dig out a canoe and try to paddle it myself, sir. I believe the church is holy. It inculcates wholesome morals. It don't meddle with my business. If I'm honest, I can vote for whom I choose to, unrestrained, sir. And it strikes me, at the same time, that your popes, your Presbyterian, Methodist, Episcopal, and other lesser churches, dictate what should be believed and what not, tolerating no dissension, with as much pride and presumption as the Church of Rome does, ever. Swing and Thomas, Briggs and Smith are fresh examples of their power, and their disposition, likewise. In the field of politics, too, they are always active, making new laws or enforcing old ones, both prescriptive and restrictive, of your habits and your freedom. You don't call them popes, oh no, and think that you are independent, but you're tied up tighter now than any veil-bound sacred sister by your narrow-minded notions, said the Catholic contestant. That's not so, and you know better. You're all trained to lie, you Jesuits, emissaries of a despot who pretends that all mankind are, or should be, his loyal subjects. There is no dependence on you. You can't serve him and be trusted. With our liberties, a moment, said the Protestant defender. Trusted is it that you say, sir? Who was truer to this country when it called for help from danger in the War of '61, sir? Ask your army's muster roll, sir, and the gravestones of the nation's holy places, who were trusted. If we Catholics were traitors, see this scar, sir, show me yours now, and of history who stood firmest by the side of Washington, sir, who bore hardships of campaigning and the brunt of battle longest, without flinching or complaining, when your Protestants deserted, or were mutinous and sullen. What does history answer? Hear me, Irishmen and Catholics, sir, said the patriotic Papist. Not because they loved this country, but because they hated England. They were fighting for the Pope then, not for human rights nor freedom, said the APA man loudly. Staff and nonsense, worse than falsehood, said the other quite disgusted, and much more of the same tenor about equally applauded. All aboard! At length was shouted, and the train, once more in motion, onward rolled its beaming headlight, tunneling afar the darkness. Onward, onward, soon the wreck that long delayed us, left behind was, and the city, hungry waiting, wide-mouthed, greedily devoured us. 5 hours late, but lo, Peoria! End of chapter 14. End of Facts and Fancies by Orpheus Everetts.